This edition of MacVoicesTV is brought to you by media sponsor Take Control eBooks. The answers you need now from leading experts. Find out more and download your copy at takecontrolbooks.com. Unfortunately, there were significant technical difficulties with the audio for this session. Rather than lose all of the great comments by the panel, we did our best to salvage as much as possible.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. This is Tech Talk number whatever. Parenting in the age of the mobile internet. We'll start off by introducing our panel. My name is Chuck Joyner. I'm at the bottom because I'm just the moderator. And before someone calls me out on it, I am not a fan, which makes me the perfect person to moderate this because I can second guess everything we know. So with that, I'll just do it in the seating order instead of up there. On the end, Chuck.
Hi, I'm Chuck Tournous. I write for the Mac Observer and RandomMaccess.com. It's 2 M's, 2 C's, 2 S's. I say that for Chuck's sake because he makes me do it. And I'm the parent of 3 children. My oldest is a daughter who turned 20, and then I have 2 teenage boys, 17 and 14. So I've been dealing with this for a while and making lots of mistakes that I can share with you.
My name is Omaha Sternberg, and I am the host and producer of iGameRadio. It is a podcast and news site about gaming on the Mac and iOS devices. And I've also done reviews for Mac Life and Macworld, and have another little site called Sound Podcast Pro, which is about consulting for podcasters. And I have a daughter who is 12 and a daughter who is 14. So I also have been doing this for a while, and as Chuck has been making lots of mistakes and learning from it along the way. So you will hopefully learn from my mistakes and probably make some of your own.
I'm Chris Breen from Macworld. I'm the senior editor there. I write a bunch of stuff. I have a 10-year-old daughter. I have never made a mistake, and I don't have to because she's perfect. She, coming right out of within utero on out, she's perfect, and I have not had to do any parenting whatsoever. She teaches me every single day.
I'm not sure how to top that.
Just lie.
I'm Tonya Engst. I'm co-founder and senior editor and CFO and chief bottle washer for TidBITS Publishing. My company has been publishing on the internet since 1991, so we've been in it for a very long time. And my son, Tristan, is 13, and as soon as we figure out how to parent in the internet age, at some particular age, he gets another birthday and we learn it all over again. So this past year has been very interesting.
So last year we did this panel, and last year it was titled Parenting in the Internet Age. But now we've changed it to mobile because of all the iDevices that we're all dealing with and some of the challenges. We had an amazing response, but a couple interesting things happened in last year's panel, and that was that these folks took off in areas we hadn't even considered. So we're going to try to pick up on some of that, update it a little bit, and maybe hopefully get some input from the audience as well. So I've had conversations with each of you in preparation for this panel, just casual conversations. One thing that keeps coming up, there was a time, well, when I grew up, it was TV time. Now it was internet time. But one of the challenges I think you all have faced or are facing is that now the kids need to be online more and more and more, just like you all are at our jobs, because that's the way their teachers are delivering information. So how do you manage this? How do you designate what is screen time and what isn't, given that a lot of it is going to be for school? Anyone want to start?
I'll start on that one, because the 14-year-old is the biggest challenge. Because she's my stepdaughter, and so she spends some of her time over at her mother's house, who is nowhere near as restrictive, she would say, as myself and my husband regarding time on the screen, time reading books, time outside, time with her friends, et cetera, et cetera. My husband and I take a rather balanced approach to it. You need to spend some of your time doing all of these different kinds of things in order to be able to have a balanced life. But my stepdaughter, when she comes home, if she could, she would walk into her bedroom, close the door, and spend all of her time on her computer and texting with her friends, and that would be it. She would do her homework because it's required, and she actually actually really does feel it's a good thing to do homework, and some of her homework does require computer time. But we recently had a conversation sitting down with her to reiterate the requirements and the reasons why it was important to have this kind of a balanced approach to only having some of your time on screen for entertainment and fun time, and some of your time doing screen time with the important things that you have to do with homework. We recognize that that's the case, but one of the big challenges was her cell phone and wanting to carry it with her all the time so she could have the text that comes in next. And that kind of really displays more of, and I hesitate to use the word addictive, because when you think of the word addictive, you think of things like, addictive to chemical substances. But there is addictive behavior patterns that children can display and adults can display when it comes to any kinds of different things, including technology. And the pattern she was displaying with her cell phone especially, the need to actually have it with her at all times, and the need to actually answer it every single time it buzzed to be able to see that next text and to be able to answer it every single time, is the classic addictive behavior pattern. And so we have been starting a pattern of weaning her from that and having her understand that, one, nobody else in the house actually does that, despite the fact that everybody else in the house actually has a cell phone, including the 12-year-old. I just gave her her iPhone just about 4 weeks ago. So that's another thing I'll get to in a short bit. But everybody else looks at the cell phone as a tool that you use to do something, and when you're done doing it, you then put it down and go do something else. And so that is what we've been trying to get her to understand more and more, that it is not something that you have to have with you as a life and death situation, but a tool that you use. And when you are done conversing with your friends through texting, it is time to end the conversation to go do something else. The conversation does not continue on into infinity or when you pass out from exhaustion. So that is the conversation we're having with her right now regarding that. But as far as the rest of the screen time, we've also been talking to her about there is the requirement of homework, and there is the time of spending time with your friends, with your family. And we've really found that when we have told her you do need to do these things and engaged with her, that's the incredibly important part. It's not good enough for you to say, you can't do this right now, you must go do something else. It's important for you to come and spend time doing it with her. So we have days where she actually cooks dinner and we work with her cooking dinner. So it's either dad working with her or stepmom working with her. Or we go out walking or doing some other kind of exercise thing. Or I encourage her over and over again to contact her friends on the phone, not through texting, but through calling and saying, hey, can we go out and do things? And she always comes back saying, I had more fun doing that and got more out of it than if I had just sat in my room and been on the computer or texting with my friends. It is a default position for her that she feels comfortable doing because it's harder to just get up and do the other stuff. But once she does it, she enjoys it thoroughly. So it really is a matter of a parent-child partnership to actually ensure that screen time and remind them of the other times that they had done it and they enjoyed themselves. And then there is the time for screen time, which they can have. And it really depends on the day. In weekends, they get more screen time than they do during the week. But the homework is always an important requirement, and making sure you foster how important homework is, not just as a matter of, well, you got to get it done for grades, but here's your future in doing well on school. It's an important aspect and of course, an important foundation for all kids. So that's how we do it.
Omaha, I'd like for you to have that conversation about ending the conversation and then doing some other things with the adults that I know. I don't think it's just the kids that are doing that.
Right.
Chris, how about you stepping into this breach? Because everybody here is a technologist, but you earn your living as a technologist, so you spend a lot of time on the screen. Does your daughter see that as a challenge, how much time she can spend?
Yeah, this is something that we talked about last year, is that one of my ways of parenting, and again, I really don't have to, But what I try to do is set the worst example possible. So when I finish working downstairs in my office, I come upstairs and I lie on the couch, so expending as few calories as possible, with my iPad in my face for hours at a time. And then she says, Dad, let's go do something else. And I say, yeah, see, I was just trying to teach you the lesson that you don't want to spend all your time doing this. The way we actually manage, that was nonsense. So the way we manage all this is that we use geography to our advantage, which is her computer is in, we have kind of the great room, the kitchen going into the living room, and it's on the island in the kitchen. So we can see whenever she's using her computer. She also has an iPod Touch. They have completely different purposes. Computers are for old people. And so when you need to get your work done that has been posted by your teacher who is an old person, you do that and then you stop touching it because it is for old people and you get old people cooties.
Anyone over 29 is old, by the way.
Anyone over 16 is old to my daughter. So for them, for my daughter at least, the computer is sort of this archaic thing they have to use, but it's like churning your own butter for her. It's just like, oh, just go to the store again. Her iPod Touch, however, it's her means of communication and entertainment. So if we see her on the iPod Touch, we know you are not doing homework. You are mucking around. And so we have a rule, no iPod Touch in your bedroom. If you want to have that time, you'll do it out here in a common area. So we kind of keep an eye on it and go, honey, it's been a while. Put that down now, and here's a book, or let's go out and have a hike or do something else. So I think if you can limit where you make technology accessible, because she's 10, we can still get away with it. 3 years from now, we won't. I'll say, honey, you want to do that out here? And she'll say, I'm perfect, and you can just, whatever rude gesture they use it for.
You make it sound easy.
Well, again, I have the perfect daughter.
That's right, I forgot. Sorry. Tonya, how about you? Because now, in your case, there are two parents that are heavily into technology and spend a lot of time on screen and with the devices.
That's right. We have two work-at-home parents at home. We work a lot with people. We're on the East Coast of the United States, but a lot of our colleagues are on the West Coast of the United States. So we are often working into the evening in order to take our time schedules up. My son has had a somewhat odd experience with screen time because he's not too typical. So he tends to pick uses of screen time that don't feel as, iffy to me as a parent. So for a long time, his pretty much favorite activity was to read Wikipedia. And it's kind of like reading the encyclopedia. So I didn't feel that was, screen time in a problematic way. Last summer, he became an internet radio fan. So he would listen to Pandora. He recently picked up Spotify. He listens to not kind of pop culture music or loud, obnoxious music. He picks up movie soundtracks, a little classical music, but he's an orchestra geek. He knows the different songs that different composers create in movie soundtracks. And so it's felt just like he's sort of using it to further his interest. So as far as screen time goes, for a long time, he believed that his computer knew how old he was and therefore gave him only a certain amount of time. It wasn't me. It was like the computer had this feature. And I did not disabuse him of this. And that was fine for a while. And if he knew his screen time was going to start running low, there's actually several different computers in the house because we keep old ones around for testing and things. So he would sort of bring in another computer, or he would learn to bring in the iPad, especially if he's listening to music on one device and runs down the screen time there. He quickly learned to just get another device. But nonetheless, his official screen time allocation is 1 hour a day. But this year in 7th grade, most of his homework is online. The teachers maintain logs where the homework assignments are posted. A great deal of the work is done in Google Docs. A great deal of it is actually collaborated with other students during the evening hours within Google Docs. So he could not conceivably do his work in 1 hour. So I have I will often give him 6 hours or something. But even though I've been nice enough to give him 6 hours so he can do his homework, it's still kind of the rule that it's 1 hour. So if I detect that it's not really homework that's going on and it's been a long time, I will sometimes go upstairs and say, don't you think you should practice your cello, or, it's time to do something else, and he does respect that. Most of the time when the screen time restriction is really only set for an hour, or for a while we had it set for midnight, that the computer turns off at midnight. He has legitimately needed more time to complete his work, and it's been trouble for him because this restriction has prevented him from doing completely reasonable homework, which was completely reasonable that he, in fact, needed to do it at 12:30 at night. I know it's crazy, but as far as helping him to be more balanced with the whole screen time thing, I like to say yes. So what we've done in our family is we've encouraged him to go out for a real sport. So all fall, he was on the cross-country team. He did not come home after school. He went and worked out with the cross-country team. So there's no screen thing happening. And that just brought a whole lot of balance to the whole thing. We encourage him to join after-school clubs so that it's not that he has to make a decision about whether to use the screen or not, but that he's being encouraged to explore a lot of different interests. This whole thing with the homework online, it is really, as a technologist, I'm completely fascinated. This is really interesting to watch his brain develop and watch how he approaches homework assignments.
It's still amazing to me how much of that has changed, how much homework has moved to the internet. Not just this is your assignment, but actual things that they are expected to do on the internet. Chuck, you may have a little different perspective than everyone because of the different ages of your kids. You've been doing this for a while, so you've seen a lot of changes come and go. You probably had to adjust your strategy, I would think.
Yeah, it used to be a lot easier. Most homework wasn't done on the computer unless you had to write the occasional paper. The computer was always in a central location. There was only one desktop computer, so you always knew where it was. Things change now. We have a couple laptops in the house. We have the iPad. Everyone has either an iPhone or an iPod Touch with them, and cell phones, themselves, even if it's not an iPhone. So there's been, in my observation, sort of a blurring of the lines between what's screen time for legitimate uses, quote unquote, for schoolwork, for collaboration, and what's sort of the recreational screen time. Even things like Facebook now. A lot of the collaboration happens on Facebook. My son, asks questions about homework, about assignments, works with other students, his friends on things that they have to turn in together. So it's not like you can just say, I caught you, you're on Facebook. You must be goofing off. It's, no, Dad, we're discussing homework, and I can show you that. But as they get older, too, you have to sort of, I think, loosen up a little bit and understand that as long as they're getting things done, as long as the grades are still coming in, with what they're capable of getting, then there's going to be some extracurricular activity on there, too. They can have a chat with their friend on Facebook in between talking about the questions for school. My son likes to listen to Pandora while he's doing his homework, so that's always running in the background. My older son, the 17-year-old, has decided that he likes to take the laptop into the sitting room because it's more quiet. But I know it's because the monitoring is a little tougher there, so he may not. That 4 hours of homework that he's working on may not be really 4 hours of homework. There could be some other things interspersed in there. What he doesn't realize, though, is the way he sits. I can see the reflection of the computer screen in the Curio cabinet. And I haven't let on that yet.
Those are the kind of tips they come for.
There are also... He also doesn't realize that I recognize the screen, the keyboard shortcut for spaces. So if he's switching off of his game back to the homework screen, he's not as fast as he thinks he is. So, but again, as long as things are getting done, as long as his grades are good, I try not to be a real bear about these things. I'd much rather have him rebel in small ways. than other things that you might do. And as long as they're good students, cut them a little slack. The other thing, though, is you have to define screen time. What is a screen? So they'll go from the homework to the Xbox to the TV. They're all screens. And I think it's really important that we get away from the screens completely, and let's get back into the physical world a little bit. Let's get back to reality and go outside and throw a ball around. And I try to make sure that when they do ask me to do those things, I want to make sure I always say yes. So I'm always encouraging that and going along with it. I don't want, because I know that if I said, no, I'm too tired to play ball, well, they're going to stop asking me. So I want to sort of encourage that behavior as much as I can.
In fact, there's a ton of evidence over the past 15 years, and I just went and saw a lecture by a neurophysiologist on Tuesday about this as well, that says that motor development and cognitive skill development are intertwined. And as a child develops, you cannot have one developing properly without the other one involved. So if you have a child who is stuffing their head full of information, but they're not doing much in the way of physical movement to do so, their cognitive skill development will be hampered by it. And it goes the other way around. Obviously, if you have somebody who's really good with sports, but they're not spending much time on, actually learning factual information, on actually understanding the world around them from a cognitive point of view, they're going to understand how to throw a ball, but they're not going to really appreciate what it means to throw the ball and get anything out of it. So it really is intertwined, especially at a younger age, but even as they grow older into adolescence, it is intertwined. So making sure that they have not just the ability to spend their time on the screen, whether it be television, whether it be the computer time, whether it be an iPad or an iPhone or an Android or whatever device you want to pick up, or going out and spending time in the physical world, throwing balls or walking or hiking or whatever it is that you want to pick and choose. Those kinds of things really need to be balanced out, and kids, at whatever age they are, really need to do both in order to be able to be a balanced person, not just as an individual, but in the head, in the physical brain.
I just wanted to add to what Omaha was saying is we do all have kids who are, I think Chris's child at 10, she's the youngest of all of our kids, I think, right now. So we've all done the little kid stage. And both through reading research and kind of my own intuition, for my son, we did very, very limited screen time for a very long time. In fact, we enrolled him in a Waldorf private school because we wanted him to be in an environment that was very much based on moving physically, lots of fine and gross motor motion, so that he could really fully experience the real world and really fully wire up as a human being, mostly with real objects. And that felt very important to us. And there's always been computers around in the house, but he was not one of those kids who just gravitated to them instantly, so that made it a little bit easier for us. So most of the screen time restrictions, or this kind of relaxed attitude I think I kind of had about it is very different. But I feel that a middle schooler who's 13 is a very different person than a 5-year-old. And when for little kids, I think it's very important to be good curators and good guardians of their development, and to be making sure that they don't just know how to build a sandcastle in an iPad game, but they really know how to get down in the dirt and build stuff with their real hands. Because not everyone, when they grow up, is going to have a job where they sit at a desk and manipulate objects. And we as people, our communities, our entire world, we need people who do know how to do things with real objects, and they have to some extent get that when they're little.
Chris, you dropped the bombshell there. I didn't know that computers were for old people.
It's true.
It's true. Sorry.
Okay. Well,
So is email, by the way.
so is email.
Yeah, the email, that's definitely.
Okay, given that computers are for old people, that's sort of why we titled this the mobile internet age. Wireless computers, even if they are for old people, iPod touches specifically, iPads, the other devices that we don't really care about because they're mobile. We know from Chuck the one thing to do is buy a Curio cabinet so that you can watch the reflection. But other than that, how are you as parents trying to control or going to control what your kids do? Because now it's not like, I think you said that her computer's in the living room.
Right.
Well, that's great. But now she has other devices where she can go anywhere and access information.
Right.
And that's a challenge.
Well,
Track their IP addresses.
yeah, well, part of the thing is, I mean, I let her know. I mean, she knows that I'm a technologist. She knows what I do. But she doesn't know how much I can do. And so you can say things to her that are technically true, but may be difficult to implement. So if you were to say...
Are you running for office, Chris?
Yes. Thank you very much. Anyway, I won't even start on that.
Yeah.
Anybody who follows me on Twitter should know. Okay, so I will tell her, I say, and we haven't reached that point, but I'm saving this, where I can say, I can monitor everything you do. I trust you, honey. So, I'm not going to be looking into your email. I'm not going to be looking into this. I mean, one thing is we absolutely do limit her on stuff. She's not on Facebook. I think Facebook is evil, and I'm not on Facebook either. And so I kind of keep mentioning that every so often. And she says, Dad, shut up, finally. And we limit who she can communicate with in email, and the same thing with chat. So, and I let her know. I said, this is this is who you can talk to. If you want to talk to somebody else, let me know, and I will add them, and you can do that. And she's perfectly happy with that. When it comes to mobile devices as well, she is, I think we did it right, or again, she's perfect, that one of her friends will say, oh, get on here, get on this service, and we can chat back and forth. And she'll say, I have to ask my dad. And she comes to me and she says, Dad, I want to get on this thing. And I say, okay, well, let's walk through the setup process and see what this looks like. And at any point where they ask anything personal, I say, no, you can't use that. And then she'll talk to her friends and say, no, my dad says we can't. And so without terrifying her, I try to let her know that there are bad people in the world and that you don't want to share information with them, and I'm open to looking at anything she wants to do, but she needs to bring it to me first, and she understands I get this stuff, and so we work through it that way, and so we don't have kind of the monitoring problem. That will eventually come up, though. I mean, I have a controlled parental account on her computer, but on her iDevice, I'm hoping that Apple improves parental controls more than they're so broad now, and it's so easy to shut a lot of stuff off, but you want finer control of things. There will come a time, though, when I say, I'm going to be checking stuff on there, and I want it, and she's smart enough that she'll be able to erase her cache and do other things to hide her tracks, but I hope that before we get to that point, she won't have to. She won't feel compelled to do that.
Chuck, you said you used the word rebel, but you'd rather see them rebel in a different way than in this way. Have you encountered any instances of digital rebellion that caused the problem? Or?
I have a 17-year-old son, Chuck.
I was leaving you, Chuck.
Can I answer the question?
Work with me here.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And Chris nails it, though. These are conversations that you need to have from a young age and continue to have them. The controls loosen up as the kids get older. At some point, you have to trust that you've instilled these lessons in your kids, and they're either going to follow them or they're not. And at some point, it becomes up to them to do. But there's always things like checking browser caches. My kids do all have Facebook accounts, but I know the password for them, and they have to accept my friend request. In exchange, I promise not to post on their walls, and it's done, right. And it works out pretty well. I did have my kids do not have computers in their rooms, and they're not allowed to take their iDevices up into their rooms. Those stay downstairs. When it's time to go to bed, they go on the kitchen counter and usually to charge, and they go up to bed. My son, and I'll make sure he doesn't watch the video this afternoon, decided, he would sneakily take up his iPod Touch every once in a while. So once I realized that, I discovered that there are some pretty nice controls in the Apple server.
The Airport.
Thank you, Airport Extreme, where you can do timed access by MAC address.
Right.
which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So what I did is set up his iPod Touch. I pulled the MAC address off of his iPod Touch and set that up so that he could not get internet access after 10 p.m. This is bedtime. The nice thing about this is he can never complain about not being able to get on the internet after 10 o'clock because then he would tip his hand. Right. So, we have this sort of nice balancing act going on.
I have another tip for this. Is also, and I've done this just one time, and that my daughter did take her iPod Touch in the room. I use Find My iPhone, and you can send a little message. And so I just said, "Dude, you are so busted."
I love that.
And it popped up her screen.
Now, if you're
just one more thing. The other thing that I've done in the past, I don't have it active right now, is that if you can change the DNS server on your Mac. So if you do that at the router level, you can use something called OpenDNS, and instead of going through your ISP's domain name server, that's what DNS stands for. It'll route it through this OpenDNS service, and there's a setting on there that you can limit questionable or undesirable sites. So it'll filter out the ability to get to some of those sites. It's not perfect, but sometimes it's a little over restrictive. But if that's something that you're worried about, you can set that up too.
Now, if you're a step-parent like I am, you run into the nasty problem where you set limits, and then the child goes over to the other parent, and the other parent maybe doesn't have the same kind of restrictions that you have, or doesn't want to accept your limits that you had imposed over your house. And so, for example, one of the problems I had with my 14-year-old is that my husband and I had said, you're not allowed to register onto sites when she was under 13. You're not allowed to register onto sites that require that you be 13 years old and older, and that included Facebook. And so one day she comes home and she has a Facebook account because she went over to Mommy's house and Mommy said, yeah, sure, whatever, because Mommy doesn't really care about those kinds of things. Well, we contacted Facebook and found out that Facebook is not so caring about those kinds of things unless you really are very, 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 very angry about the fact that there's a child that's under 13 on their site with a Facebook account. And it got shut down, and then she went back over to her Mommy's house and got one set up and then just didn't mention it, thinking that, of course, we would never actually find out about it, which we did very quickly. So those kinds of things, you can't sit there and say, well, you can't do that in a situation where she's just going to go over to the other household and then do it anyway if she wants to. This is where, again, like I said, the partnership with the child is crucially important when you have a situation where you have a two-household issue and both households don't agree on the limits and the restrictions that you want to be able to employ. So one of the ways that we've been able to do that, again, is having those really important conversations and actually showing the information and saying, these are the kinds of things that can happen when you do these kinds of things that go past the restrictions that we've put upon you. These are the reasons why. And believe me, the kids actually really respect when you treat them on that level and tell them, I appreciate that you want these things, and I'm going to let you understand why it is that I don't want you to do them as though you're an adult like me. Even though you're really not treating them like an adult, there's parameters around there, you're still accepting and respecting them. And they can appreciate that a lot more. There can be times when they're still going to go ahead and break those restrictions, and there's only one thing that you can do, which is go ahead and employ the punishments at your house, and then they'll go over to the other house and they'll do what they want to. But at the very least, they understand when they're at your house that these are the rules that are required. And they may very well respect you a lot more because you have those particular parameters and you've described and discussed with them why those parameters are there. And I know that my stepdaughter actually really does respect the fact that we discuss this stuff with her and that she understands them much better. When she goes to her Mommy's house, she can do whatever she wants to, basically, and she really doesn't respect her mom very much because the parameters aren't there. And she's like, well, I can do whatever I want to, but I don't really feel like my mom cares. So that's basically the situation that we have. And with step-parents, you can't enforce that kind of thing. So don't try to pretend that you can. Just have those conversations and enforcement at your house, make sure you understand that, make sure she understands or he understands you know that, and that it's just the way it is at our house.
One of the problems with these sessions is we never have enough time to get to everything. I would like, we probably have time for about 2, maybe 3 questions. If anybody would like to step to the mic, if you have a question, otherwise we can just keep going. Well, if somebody thinks of one, well,
Yep.
Just wander right over there.
yes, sir. Well, all right. Since you're close to the mic, if you would.
My first question is, I worked in one of those older places at school. I didn't realize it until now, but thanks for letting me. What can we, from the school side, what can teachers do to facilitate communication or expectation with parents, or make sure, I'm hearing that your kids saying, well, I have to do this project on the internet, blah, blah, blah. You never might not really know what people really assigned and not assigned. What can you do to facilitate communication between the school and home?
Before anyone answers, can I ask what grade level you're at?
I work in middle school. That's why I also do college or workouts for all grade levels.
At my daughter's school, her teacher has a blog that she posts the day's assignments on there, and so she's perfect, but she's a little forgetful. And so we'll go through her assignment. She'll be working on her math and something else, and she says, "Okay, I think I'm done." And we say, "Okay, well, let's check the blog." And we always check the blog, and it really isn't. I know how overworked teachers are and underpaid they are. But if they could just have bullet points, if there are 5 things that the kids are supposed to be doing, and that isn't just for tomorrow, but oftentimes she'll be working on a project and it's due a week from Friday. To have that on there as well, and that helps us as parents remind her, because there can't be that excuse anymore of, well, I didn't know. And so, well, it's on the blog. But our job is to make sure that we do that too. We just can't say, honey, go check the blog, because maybe she won't. We have to take her homework. Her homework is our homework too. And so we don't do it for her, but we make sure that she knows what she's supposed to do.
In my school, my boys both go to high schools, and they use a system called Home Logic, which we find very, very invaluable. All the teachers post the assignments. They also post the grades as they happen, so it's not like we need to wait until the report card comes out to find out how our kids are doing, even down to the level of daily homework assignments, whether they were turned in or not. And we find that really useful. So the communication aspect is very helpful for us. We can go and ask the kids, do you have any homework? How are you doing in Latin? I see that we're having a little trouble on the last test that came up. Just that knowledge is very helpful for us parents. And also the accessibility of teachers by email has been a real boon to us. If we have questions, all the teachers have email addresses through the school. Some of them use their personal email addresses, but they're very responsive in our school, and that helps us out a lot. If we have questions about an assignment, or we want to know, is there something more my son could be doing in this subject to pull his grades up, that's been a terrific thing for us.
Does this mean that parents should have expectations of their schools from a technology standpoint and a communication standpoint back to the parents as well as to the kids?
That's a very, very tough question. The school district that my son goes to is somewhat disorganized about the technology, and the teachers have created kind of a very grassroots kind of thing where the teachers themselves are trying to figure out how to come up with solutions, and the administration has not been able to get organized to provide any kind of top-down solutions. As a parent, a tip that I could pass on to teachers is we were told as parents at the beginning of the year that we were invited and encouraged to read the blogs that the teachers had put out. And so my 7th grade son is much more in the, this is my thing, this is my schoolwork. I don't really want you, my mom, imposing on my space here. And so by the teachers very openly inviting the parents in, I can say to him, no, Ms. Samara said that I should bookmark the blog site. I'm supposed to look at it. So I hope the teachers haven't opened themselves up to an onslaught of feedback and email from parents.
but it has been very helpful to feel just welcomed into the knowing the day-to-day goings on in the classrooms. Certainly since I was a kid, there is quite a bit more homework, and my 7th grader does do a lot better with a little bit of support. So if the dinner table conversation is, hey, I hear you're studying the Pilgrims, this week in social studies class, that gives him a whole platform that he can tell us what he learned that day, which is much better than, so what's going on in school today? We really appreciate the teachers communicating in any way possible.
I would add, the internet is an absolutely wonderful resource for teachers and students to use, but it's not the only resource. For those of you who are familiar with what happened a week ago last Wednesday with the internet blackout in protest of SOPA and PIPA, one of the sites that went black was Wikipedia. I cannot tell you the thousands and thousands of people who complained about Wikipedia being down. Not just students complaining that they would not be able to get their homework done, but teachers complaining that they wouldn't be able to teach, wouldn't be able to get their plan ready for school the next day or ever, because so many of them thought that Wikipedia was down permanently, because Wikipedia was their only source of information. So Wikipedia is an absolutely wonderful tool and resource. It is just one of many. And students should not be relying just on one resource and one tool to use. They should be relying on all kinds of many different tools, internet, libraries, books, etc. And all of those kinds of different tools are useful, and I think that should be spread around. So not limiting it to just one is very important.
And unfortunately, that's all the time we have, and I hate it. But I tell you what, there are a couple of people raising hands. We'll be around for a little while afterwards until they throw us out for the next session. Thank you so much for coming. This show will be up, or this session will be on live video podcast, MacVoices.tv. Please come, engage with us, and let us know, because this is a topic that's just going to keep on changing. Thank you all for coming.
MacVoices TV is part of the MacVoices Group and a member of Mac Level 10.